There must have been some April showers because May in the mystery journal is bringing all the Mayflowers in the perfect colour palette for lovers of lavender and lilac. I wanted this theme to feel like walking under an arbour of wisteria, and I think I pulled it off. Do you have a favourite flower? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you have some planning to do too, grab your journal and let's get cozy and do some planning together. Hi, I'm Erin, and I love floral stationery so much I made an entire 6-month journal full of it and then gave it away, and this is that journal. Let's take a look at some of the stationery I've used for this theme. The journal is from Tiefossi. The hero of this setup is this PET tape from the Washi tape shop. It's called Purple Muse, and I'm teaming it up with this very subtle grey and purple tape from JOURNALSAY. This one's currently sold out, but I'll link to it anyway, and hopefully they'll restock it. By the way, I will have links in the description to everything I'm using in this video if I possibly can, so you can get your hands on anything that takes your fancy too. My habit is to stick all of my decoration to the outside edges of my pages, and I wanted to challenge myself to do something a bit different for this one. So I'm adding this kind of train track through the center of the page with this nice wide washi tape, and I'm going to use that to anchor all of my decorations for this cover spread that we're working on. This lovely hydrangea tape is from Paper Monogatari from their Afternoon in Paris collection. Unfortunately, you can't get that one anymore, but I'll try to find you something similar. Since May is the month with the least amount of letters in its name, something I really enjoy doing for May themes is to put each of the letters of the name of the month into a little frame. And this PET tape set has lots of gorgeous little frames in it, so I thought this was a great opportunity to do this. I've actually done this before in the mystery journal in a different theme, and I enjoyed it so much I thought let's bring it back. If you wanted to do something similar to this, I would definitely recommend placing your frames first and then adding your letters inside so that you don't accidentally miss your letters. It can be tricky to place them, and then layer the frames over the top. It also depends a little bit on the method you're using to add your letters, so I'm going to be using letter stamps for these, but if you're going to hand letter them and that kind of thing, then you'll have a better idea of how much space you need if you have your frames down first. As ever, I'm using an acrylic marker with my stamps rather than a stamp pad because I have a lot more colours in acrylic markers, especially brush markers, which work really well with these, than I have in stamp pads, and this is just an easier way to get a greater range of colours for me. This particular acrylic marker is from a set of purple and pink colours that I got from JOURNALSAY. They're from the brand Languo, and they are particularly juicy acrylic markers. They put out a lot of paint or ink or whatever you want to call it, and they're very opaque as well, and that makes them perfect for using with stamps. Now I'm just going to sprinkle some of my larger pieces of decoration around from the Purple Muse tape. I always like to start with the larger decoration so I know how much space I have to work with, and then add in smaller decorations later to tie everything together. The tapes from the Washi tape shop are particularly great for this because they give you a really big range of sizes and images on a tape like this, so you really can get the best of both worlds with a single piece of stationery. I'm so happy with how the cover spread is looking, and I never want to take it too far, so here's a look with the pages bent up a little bit so you can see them without the reflection from my lights. I just want to tidy up my letters a little bit here. I smeared them a touch when I was stamping, so I'm using a white paint marker for that, and then we can move on to the next spread. But first, I want to give a huge shout out to today's video sponsor Tiefossi, who also very kindly supplied the notebook that I used for this mystery journal. This exact journal is the A5 foliage notebook in teal, and it's currently 30% off, so you can get it for $18 in Tifossi's massive clearance sale. They're moving warehouses, so right now a huge selection of their notebooks have had their prices slashed, some up to 70%, so it's a great time to stock up. And I checked, and you can also stack my 10% discount code Erin Smith on top of those clearance sale prices and save even more. I'm a big Tiefossi user and fan. I currently have 4 Tiefossi journals on the go as part of my 2026 journal lineup. The Lavender Square is my memory keeping journal. I'm using the Leaf and Texture B5 for my reading journal. The A5 Vintage in purple is my D&D journal, and I've just started on the Moon's Power A5 for my new research and development journal too. Plus, my last 3 completed A5 bullet journals and the mystery journal before this one were all Tiefossi journals too, so I can personally vouch for their hardiness and durability. As much as I'm a die-hard dot grid lover, they do also have lined and blank notebook options, and if you're a little paper gremlin like me who goes through notebooks really quickly, I love that you can filter the results by page number to make sure you're getting the chunkiest journal for your project. These leather zodiac journals have 400 pages. 400! These locations around the world can also score free shipping on orders over $39 US, although with the sale prices, you might need to get 2 or maybe even 3 journals to hit the threshold. And with 160 GSM paper, page numbers, pen loops, back cover pockets, ribbon bookmarks, and covers like these, what's not to love? Shop Tiefosi's clearance and sample sale at the link in the description and nab yourself a special little journal at a very special price. Thanks again to Tiefossi for sponsoring today's video. We're moving on to the calendar spread now, and I wanted to have a very minimal kind of floating in space feeling for the calendar this time, so rather than drawing in a grid, I'm just going to have the heading row for each week in some colours that look nice with our theme, just floating there as a space to put the number for each day of the month. I've used Tombow dual brush pens for this. They are my absolute favourite because the size of the brush tip on these perfectly fits a 5mm dot grid, which is really convenient. The purple is the 623, the pink is the 673, and the grey is the N60. Then we'll just stamp the initial for each day of the week along the top so we know exactly where those go, especially because this journal actually isn't for me. We haven't even talked about that yet, have we? Let me tell you all about this whole mystery journal concept. I mentioned earlier that I set this journal up for 6 months and then gave it away, and that is absolutely true. Actually, I guess I kind of have told you about it, haven't I? That's the whole concept. But I haven't told you why. So the reason I like to set up a journal and give it away is because I have personally quite different circumstances to a lot of people. I make videos on the internet for a living, and so the mystery journal came about as a way for me to share some maybe more accessible layouts for people who are in more traditional employment situations, so I could give some inspiration to people without just being like, this is my content planner over and over, you know? I am also very lucky to be in a position where I purchase a lot of stationery for my job, and I also am sent a lot of stationery by brands, so this gives me a way to use up some more of that stationery in a very productive way. But also I didn't want to just set up the journal and then have it sit on a shelf or throw it in the bin, so I thought I'd do it early and then give the journal away so that somebody could use it for the months that it covered. So while I'm sharing this video in April of 2026, I actually set these pages up back in November and December of 2025. And if you fast forward the timeline, if each journal is for 6 months, then you can probably work out that I'm currently working on the next mystery journal for the giveaway to open in May. So if you like the idea of a journal like this, maybe stay tuned in case you might like to enter the giveaway for the next one. Our calendar spread is complete now, and we're going to turn the page and move on to our next spread. Both of these pages actually serve different purposes, but I feel like they make sense together because they're both kind of a mindset theme. If you've ever set New Year's resolutions and then completely forgotten about them, a page like this left one might be something useful for you. At the top half, we're going to have a section for goals, so breaking down those New Year's goals into smaller steps or just specific things that you want to achieve in this particular month. And under that is a reflection section. This one's one you'd come back to at the end of the month and fill out a little reflection for how you think the month went. What did you do well? What could you be working on? Was there anything that was out of your control that happened, or is there anything you did that you're really proud of? That kind of thing goes into your reflection section. And on the facing page, we have a gratitude log. I really enjoy this kind of thing. I haven't had one in my own journal for a while, but maybe I should bring it back soon. The idea of a gratitude log, in case you haven't come across one before, is just to note down something every day that you're grateful for. It's supposed to help to train your mind to look for positive things. I know with the world the way it is right now, that can be really difficult, and in some ways I think that maybe makes a gratitude practice even more important. It's a very easy page to set up. You just need space for the numbers from the beginning to the end of the month, so because this one is for May, it will go up to 31. I didn't have quite enough lines there. I needed to add one more second line highlight at the bottom. And I always like to also include the initial for each day of the week next to the number. That just helps me to keep things straight in my mind a little bit more, so that's something I like to do. The functional parts of these pages are the most important thing, so I set those up first, and I'm adding my decoration now just in whatever space is left over. There isn't a huge amount of room, so I won't go too hard with my decoration here, just a little sprinkling, and we'll move on to the next spread. Our next spread is all about tracking. I think tracking is a very classic part of the bullet journal method. It seems to be what attracts a lot of people to the system, so I definitely want to make sure there are some habit trackers in this journal, but a different kind of tracker on the facing page as well. My go-to style of habit tracker is usually to do 6 little separate calendars that can be used for 6 separate habits to be tracked, but I wanted to try something different, so instead I'm making a table-style tracker, but rather than drawing it in a big box with lots of little fine liner lines, I thought I'd try and make it like a picnic blanket, a little tartan pattern with my pens. Kind of similar to how I didn't want to grid in the calendar this time, I also didn't want a table in this table, even though it is very much still going to function like a table. Just like on the gratitude log, I'm adding the number for each day of the month, as well as the initial to go with it along the left side there. And each one of these vertical lines represents a habit, so you can write the name of the habit up the top, and as you complete it, you can add a little marking corresponding to the date, so you can see if you achieved the habit that day or not. Since we are eschewing the black fine liners all the way through for this one except for some numbers, I'm going to do the same thing for my spending log. So I'm starting out with the second line highlights with my grey marker, and I'm going to add some vertical lines to this one so it's a bit more like a table, but I'm going to use my purple 623 marker for that with the bullet end instead. I just really don't want black lines for some reason for this setup. The spending log exists as a way to track everything that you spend in the month, or just larger purchases if you prefer, and back at the very beginning of this journal there's an overall cash flow tracker that relates to this table, so as you fill it out there will be headings along the top on that purple row. There'll be item, category and cost, and it's just 2 of the exact same table right next to each other. Come the end of May, you can tally up what you've spent on each of the categories that you've assigned and write those down in the space underneath. That kind of pink empty space is for tallying up all of the spending categories at the end of the month. And then you can transfer that data back to the tables at the beginning of the journal and get this amazing comprehensive bird's eye view of all of your spending over the course of 6 months, which can be really useful if you're trying to save or trying to pay down a debt or something like that. And you can compare those categories to your budget that you allocated a few months before and see if you're coming in above or below budget or exactly where your money's going. It's really useful stuff to know. Our next spread is all about memory keeping, and I started including this in the mystery journal when I realized what a great time I was having including memory keeping in my own journal. In fact, I enjoyed it so much I started a dedicated memory keeping journal that I now use for my own bits and pieces of packaging that come with my orders, or notes or cards from friends, or movie tickets or receipts, all that kind of stuff that goes in a typical junk journal. Makes for great memory keeping. So this is a dedicated memory keeping spread. I'm going to just decorate it quite gently. I'm not going to go too hard on anything here because I want to leave lots of space for the winner of the journal to fill this spread in with their own things. But I also wanted to make sure it felt like part of the theme, so just a little bit of gentle decoration just to make sure this one feels like it's friends with the pages around it. And if you're not someone who's into the idea of junk journaling, but you do want to record your memories within your journal pages, I would recommend going with some photos that you print yourself from your adventures throughout the month, or just writing about the events of the month can be a really great way to do this too, a more traditional diary kind of system. I've also seen people illustrate the events of the month or do a little doodle every day. There are so many ways you could approach this, so the more space I leave blank here, the better. You could even turn it into one of those a scrap a day challenges. I think that would be really fun. In a similar vein, our next spread is also one I'm going to decorate very gently. This one is actually not for any specific purpose, it's just a leftover spare spread so that the winner of this journal can add anything that I haven't already included. If they need more trackers or there's a specific kind of spread that I haven't thought of, they can include that here. It still goes in before the weekly spreads, it's still decorated in the style of the rest of the theme, but there's enough page space left blank that they can really use it for anything they might find they want to add. And if they can't think of anything extra to add, then this could be overflow from the memory keeping page from before, or it could be a space for adding a favorite quote. or just a fun place to play with some stationery, because I always make sure to include a little bit extra of the items I use for each theme when I send the mystery journal off, so that could be a good place just to have a great time with some stickers and washi tape. We're into the weekly spreads now, and I love a weekly spread. They're where I really spend most of my own time in my journals when I'm planning. We're going to start out with a style of weekly I haven't done in a long time though, and that is a radial weekly. The idea of this one is that your decoration goes in the center and your planning space moves in a circular pattern around the outside of that, almost like a clock. It's a really good weekly to use if you have larger decorative elements that you want to really feature, so you can go ham on those in the middle of the page and still have lots of space around them to plan out your weeks and add your to-do lists and anything else you like to do on your weeklies. It's also a really quick style of weekly to set up, so I recommend it for that reason too. I like to go anti-clockwise around my weekly here because that just feels more comfortable to me, but if you prefer the idea of a clockwise radial weekly spread, you could absolutely do that too. And if you wanted to work out how much space to leave for each of your planning sections, I like to take the number of dot grid spaces from top to bottom on the spread, so in this case 38. I know I want to add 4 days to each side with a note section to compensate for the extra day on the right side, so I'll divide that 38 by 4, and that gives me 9.5. If you wanted everything to be very precise and use the whole page, you could make the vertical spaces for each of your planning sections for each day 9.5 dot grid spaces tall. I don't typically love the half spaces myself, so I just add those together. We'd get 2 dot grid spaces. I'll leave one blank at the top and bottom of the page and just do 9 dot grid spaces tall for each of my planning sections. Let's move on to our next weekly spread. This one's a really cool one. It involves having a box for each day of the week in this kind of S-shaped pattern across the spread. And it leaves an excellent space for decoration in the top left side of the left page and the bottom right side of the right page, which I love. I love having purposeful spaces for decoration that don't interfere with your planning. Since we're not doing fine liner boxes for this setup at all, I'm just jumping in with my markers to do second line highlights in different colors, so it's very clear where one day of planning ends and the next one starts. This is the point where using stamps for all your letters and numbers across a theme starts to get a little bit frustrating. It definitely takes longer than just writing something out or using some functional stickers, but the end result is always so pretty, so I think it's worth it in the long run. I actually owe you an apology. I have missed a little bit of the process of setting up this one. Don't worry, it will be in the flip through at the very end of the video, so you'll still get to see what it looks like, but I don't have the decoration going on this page for you. We're going to actually just fade into the next spread and continue on, but you'll get to see it at the end. Sometimes I just get so in the zone and into my flow state that I don't realize when my cameras run out of battery. Sorry about that. This one is a fairly standard weekly layout. I like to come back to this one pretty often. We're really just dividing each page into quarters, but then making those boxes a little bit smaller so there's some space for decoration above and below. In case you're curious, the amount of space I'm leaving for planning for every day on this weekly spread is 10 dot grid spaces across and 13 dot grid spaces tall. I've left 2 spaces in between each one, both vertically and horizontally, so the alignment is really nice. And there are 5 dot grid spaces blank at the top and 4 dot grid spaces blank at the bottom to allow some space for some washi tape and some stickers, because you know I love my decoration. Continuous thin spaces that need decoration like this are probably why I love washi tape so much. It is just the most effective and efficient way to add something beautiful without really having to try. Since the washi tape at the top and bottom of the spread is quite busy, there's a lot going on, it kind of carries a lot of visual weight. I still want to add some little stickers, but I don't want anything too overpowering, so I'm just going to sprinkle some of these smaller ones around in the corners of my planning boxes, just until everything feels a little bit balanced and there's enough of a representation of other parts of the theme on this spread without it feeling like there's too much going on. Thank goodness for tiny stickers. They are perfect for this kind of thing. You would not believe the power a tiny sticker can have. We only have one weekly spread left to set up, and this one is actually going to have very similar decoration to the previous, but instead of having vertical boxes, this time we're going to have horizontal sections where the planning will happen. I've already gone in and penciled out the layout for this one so I can jump in with my washi tape without feeling like I'm going to accidentally cover anything that I don't want covered. And I'm going to continue cycling through my pen colours just to add a line at the top of the planning space for each one of my days. This is both a decorative element because it's bringing in the colours of the theme, but it's also functional in that it's dividing the spaces for each of the weekly planning, and it's also going to give me somewhere to anchor the text for each of my weeklies. So my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday will go right on top of these lines. Whenever I set up this horizontal weekly, I always like to use it to give some of my larger pieces of decoration a moment, nothing too big, but the kind of in-between sized ones, you know, the medium stickers. I like to alternate which side these go on, so they'll sit, for instance, right under the heading on the Monday on the left side, and then on the Tuesday it'll sit on the right side of the page, and so on and so forth as we go down. And I like to mirror it on the facing page, so we'll have the decoration on the right side for the Friday at the top there, and then on the left side for the Saturday, and so on and so forth. So we end up with two decorations in the middle on the Tuesday and Saturday, and on the Thursday and notes, and then on the outside edges of the pages they really balance things out for the other days. I love how it looks. In fact, I love how it looks so much that I often use this layout in my own weekly spreads. Even though I'm not a huge fan of horizontal planning spaces for weeklies, I just prefer a vertical typically, but this one looks so good that I do it anyway. And would you believe that's the final spread for this setup, which means we can have a little flip through of March in the Mystery Journal from start to finish. I hope you enjoyed this little wander through the wisteria with me. I had such a good time setting this up with you, and if you've been planning alongside me, I'd love to hear what you've been working on. There's only one theme left to share with you for June in this journal before we move on to the next mystery journal, which is an interesting one. It's actually going to have black pages. It has its own whole overarching theme within too, and it is not florals, so it's going to look very different to this journal. I hope you enjoy. I can't wait for you to see when that video comes out. Once again, there are links to everything I used to create this setup in the description. As long as they're still available, I'll have a link for you there. And don't forget to scroll down a little bit further in the description if you want to find all of my discount codes. I might be able to save you a little bit of money. And if purple florals aren't quite your vibe, never fear, I have much May inspiration on the channel already. Here is a dark academia theme that I did in my own journal last year, as well as a different take on a pastel floral from a previous mystery journal.